My name is Ashley, and I operate in a world where brands are everything. I do not build houses, I build companies. I invest in people, in visions, in futures. But my family? They never saw me as a titan. They only saw me as the quiet sister, the one who did not quite have the flair, the sparkle, the aggressive need for attention that defined my brother, Tyler. That perception shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. The phone rang, while I was reviewing term sheets in my home office. Tyler's name flashed on the screen. He did not ask how I was. He did not ask about my daughter, Sophia. He just launched straight into his agenda. Ashley, we need to talk about the Scholastic Achievement Gala for Jackson, he said, his voice clipped and efficient. The guest list is tight, very high profile. Investors, board members, the local press. Okay, I said, leaning back in my chair. Sophia is excited. She painted a card for him. Yeah, about that. Tyler cut in. We have been reviewing the aesthetic for the evening. And frankly, Sophia does not fit the brand. I paused, my fingers hovered over my keyboard. Excuse me? She is quiet. She wears those paint-splattered clothes. She gets overwhelmed in crowds, he continued, as if discussing a defective product line. This gala is about excellence. It is about high performance. We need the visuals to be cohesive. So, she is uninvited. It is nothing personal, Ash. It is just brand protection. Drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. I would love to know who is part of our community. I did not argue. I did not beg. I looked across the room at my 11-year-old daughter. Sophia was sitting by the window, humming softly as she dabbed blue paint onto a canvas. She was gentle. She was kind. She was everything they were not. Understood, I said. My voice was flat. Brand protection. Got it. Glad you get it, Tyler said, relief audible in his tone. See you at the pre-dinner tonight. Do not be late. He hung up. I set the phone down on my desk. The screen went black, reflecting my own face back at me. There were no tears. There was no shaking. Just a cold, crystalline realization. Brand protection. They thought they were the elite. They thought they were the architects of their own success. They had no idea who had laid the foundation. I opened my laptop. I bypassed my work email and logged into a secure portal. The back end of my venture capital firm, Apex Horizon. I navigated to the active portfolio dashboard. There it was, right at the top. Harrison Technologies. Status, bridge financing, pending lead signature. Amount, $12 million. Tyler did not know I owned Apex Horizon. He thought I was a mid-level consultant for some boring logistics firm. He did not know that the angel syndicate funding his desperate bid to stay solvent was just me, operating through 3 shell companies. He did not know that without my signature on this document by midnight, his entire company would be insolvent by morning. I hovered my cursor over the cancel button. It would be so easy. 1 click, and his brand would evaporate, but that was too impersonal, too remote. Tyler wanted to talk about brands? Fine, we would talk about brands. I closed the laptop. I stood up and walked over to Sophia. Hey, sweetie, I said, smoothing her hair. Change of plans for the gala. It is going to be a bit too boring for us. How about we do something else? She looked up, paint smudged on her cheek. Okay, Mom, can we get ice cream instead? We can get anything you want, I promised. Then I went to my closet and pulled out my suit. The one I wore when I acquired companies. The one I wore when I fired CEOs. It was time for dinner. The drive to my parents' lake house was quiet. Sophia played a game on her tablet, humming along to the radio. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, not from fear, but from a focused, icy rage. I was not just a sister attending a dinner. I was an auditor walking into a crime scene. We pulled up the long, gravel driveway. The house was illuminated like a beacon, lights blazing from every window to showcase the expensive art and custom furniture inside. My parents, Susan and David, stood on the porch with drinks in hand, posing for a selfie. They were orchestrating the perfect casual family evening shot for their followers. Smile, David. Look candid, my mother chirped, tilting her head to catch the light. They did not move toward us as we parked. They did not wave. They waited until we walked up the steps into their frame. "Ashley, you made it," my mother said, air kissing my cheek without making contact. "And Sophia, you brought your sketchbook. How quaint." "Hi, Grandma," Sophia said softly. "Where is Jackson?" I asked, cutting through the pleasantries. "Oh, he is inside with Tyler," my father said, beaming. "Getting fitted for his custom tuxedo. It is Italian silk. We flew the tailor in from New York. Only the best for our future valedictorian." We walked inside. The house smelled of expensive candles and old money pretension. It was a museum of their vanity. Photos of Tyler and Jackson covered every surface. Jackson holding trophies, Tyler cutting ribbons, my parents shaking hands with senators. There were no photos of Sophia, not one. I walked past the display case in the hallway. It held a framed newspaper clipping from 10 years ago. "Local entrepreneur, Tyler Harrison. Launches tech startup." I remembered that day. I remembered writing the check that made it possible. I remembered my father telling me, "We are betting on the horse that can win, Ashley. You understand, do you not?" I understood now. I understood perfectly. "Come on, Ash," my mother called from the dining room. "Tyler has a big announcement about the funding round. We are celebrating." I followed her voice. The dining table was set with crystal and silver. It was a stage for their performance. And I was just the audience. But tonight, the audience was going to walk out. I sat down at my assigned seat, at the far end, away from the center, away from the conversation. Sophia sat next to me, shrinking into her chair. "This funding is a game changer." Tyler's voice boomed from the living room as he walked in, clapping Jackson on the shoulder. Jackson, a miniature version of his father, in a half-finished suit, looked bored and entitled. "12 million. It puts us in the big leagues, Dad. No more scraping by." "I always knew you would do it, son," my father said, pouring wine. "You have the vision." I watched them. The delusion was almost impressive. They genuinely believed their own press release. They believed this lifestyle, the lake house, the cars, the gala, was funded by Tyler's brilliance. They had erased the reality that I had paid off the second mortgage on this very house 3 years ago when my father's bad investments nearly cost them everything. I had done it anonymously through a trust, to spare his ego. That was my mistake. I had protected their pride at the expense of my own dignity. "Ashley," Tyler said, finally acknowledging me. "You are quiet. Still crunching numbers for that logistics firm?" "Something like that," I said. "Well, try to keep up tonight," he laughed, taking his seat at the head of the table. "We are talking high finance. Might be a bit over your head." I smiled. It was a small, sharp thing. "I think I can manage." I looked at my phone under the table. The portal was still open. The withdrawal letter was drafted. All I had to do was hit send. But not yet. I wanted them to eat first. I wanted them to taste the victory they thought they had won before I took it away. Dinner arrived on bone china plates, carried by caterers who moved silently in the background. My mother, Susan, directed them with subtle flicks of her wrist, treating them like props in her stage play. We were served filet mignon and truffle mash, rich, heavy food that settled like lead in my stomach. For the first 20 minutes, the conversation was a monologue. Tyler spoke about the gala, about the guest list, about the articles that would be written about him. He did not eat. He just held his wine glass, gesturing with it, sloshing expensive red liquid dangerously close to the white tablecloth. "Jackson is going to give a speech," Tyler announced, beaming at his son. "We hired a speechwriter from D.C. to polish it, but the core is all Jackson. It is about legacy." Jackson sat slumped in his chair, looking bored, texting under the table. He did not look like a legacy. He looked like a kid who was tired of performing. "Sophia," my father said suddenly, his voice booming. "Stop playing with your food. It is distracting." Sophia froze. She had not been playing. She had been cutting a piece of bread. Her hands were trembling slightly. "Sorry, Grandpa," she whispered. Tyler leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he focused on her hands. There was a small smudge of cerulean blue paint near her thumbnail, a remnant of her afternoon art session that scrubbing had not fully removed. You really need to scrub better, Sophia. Tyler sneered, pointing with his fork. Look at that, it looks dirty. It is just paint, I said, my voice tight. It is unprofessional, Tyler countered, his tone dripping with condescension. Jackson knows better. Look at his hands, clean, manicured. Those are the hands of a future CEO. Sophia's hands look like, well, like manual labor. Sophia dropped her hands into her lap, hiding them under the napkin. Her chin wobbled. A single tear escaped, tracking silently down her cheek. The silence at the table was deafening. I waited for my parents to step in. I waited for them to say, "That is enough, Tyler. She is a child." Instead, my mother sighed. It was a long, exasperated sound, directed not at Tyler, but at Sophia. "Oh, stop crying, Sophia," Susan said, taking a sip of wine. "Do not be so sensitive. Your uncle is just trying to coach you. Appearance matters. If you want to be taken seriously in this world, you have to look the part. He is helping you. Helping." I looked at my weeping daughter, shrinking into herself to become invisible. I looked at my brother, smug and superior. I looked at my parents, nodding in agreement. And suddenly, the picture clicked into focus. For years, I had viewed their behavior as simple meanness. I thought they were just callous. I was wrong. It was something far more systemic. This was the trap of normalized cruelty. To them, this was not abuse. It was refinement. They did not see a crying child. They saw a defect in the product line that needed to be hammered out. They believed that humiliation was the kiln that hardened the clay. In their twisted logic, they were doing her a favor. They were trying to bully her into becoming a winner like them. If she survived the cruelty, she belonged. If she broke, well, she was never one of them anyway. They were not just bad people. They were a cult of their own image, and they were actively trying to sacrifice my daughter's spirit on the altar of their vanity. I looked at Sophia. She was not a defect, she was perfect, and she was in danger. I realized then that I could not love them out of this. I could not explain it away. You cannot reason with people who view empathy as a weakness. You can only speak to them in the one language they respect: power. I reached under the table and took Sophia's hand. I squeezed it hard, willing my strength into her. "You are right, Mom," I said. My voice was so calm it frightened me. "Appearance matters. It matters a great deal." Tyler grinned, mistaking my coldness for submission. "Glad you finally agree, Ash. Maybe there is hope for you yet." "I think we should make a toast," I said, "to the future." "Now you are talking." Tyler grabbed the bottle and refilled everyone's glasses. "To the future. To $12 million. He stood up, glass raised high. The candlelight reflected in his eyes, masking the hollowness inside. He had no idea that the future he was toasting was already dead. "To us," Tyler said, his voice thick with self-satisfaction. "To the Harrisons. We do not just survive, we conquer." My parents raised their glasses, murmuring their agreement like members of a choir. Jackson mimicked his father, lifting his sparkling cider with an air of practiced boredom. Then, Tyler turned his gaze to me. His smile did not reach his eyes. It was a predator's grin, sharp, assessing, and dismissive. "And to Ashley," he added, the charity, in his voice, dripping like poison, "for making the drive out here. Maybe one day, if you learn how the real world works, you will be able to contribute something real to this family. Until then. Thanks for filling the seat." The table chuckled. A polite, synchronized sound. That was it. The final deposit in a bank account that had been overdrawn for decades. I did not flush. I did not look down. I pulled my phone from my pocket and placed it on the table, screen facing up. The light from the chandelier caught the Gorilla Glass. "That is a lovely sentiment, Tyler," I said. My voice was steady, cutting through the laughter like a scalpel. "But I think there has been a misunderstanding about who exactly is contributing what." Tyler frowned, his glass still raised. "What are you talking about?" I unlocked my phone. I opened the secure messaging app linked to my legal team. I typed one word: withdraw. I hit send. I am talking about the $12 million you think you just secured, I said. I am talking about the bridge financing from the Angel Syndicate you have been bragging about for weeks, yeah? What about it? He laughed, but it was nervous now. You think you know something about venture capital, Ash? I know everything about it, I replied. Because I am the syndicate. The room went dead silent. The kind of silence where you can hear the hum of the refrigerator 3 rooms away. What? Susan asked, her voice trembling. Apex Horizon is not a syndicate of anonymous investors, I explained, looking directly at my brother. It is a single-member LLC, it is me. I built it 3 years ago after I sold my logistics software. I am the one who vetted your financials. I am the one who overlooked the chaotic burn rate. And I am the one who was supposed to sign your term sheet tonight. Tyler lowered his glass. His face had gone from flush to a sickly pale. You are lying. You work in data entry. I own the data, I corrected. And as of 30 seconds ago, I have formally withdrawn the offer. The term sheet is void. Your bridge financing is gone. You cannot do that, David sputtered, standing up. Ashley, this is a joke. Tell us it is a joke. It is not a joke, Dad. It is business. And Tyler just failed the final due diligence check. Character. Tyler slammed his glass down. Wine splashed onto the pristine tablecloth, a violent red stain spreading outward. You bitch. You are trying to ruin me? Because I did not invite your kid to a party? You are going to kill my company over an invite? I did not kill your company, I said calmly. You did. You built a house of cards, and expected me to be the glue holding it together. I stood up. I was not finished. There was one more layer to peel back. One more secret I had kept locked away to protect their fragile egos. And Tyler? I said, leaning over the table. That is not the only thing I own. He stared at me, breathing hard, looking like a cornered animal. 4 years ago. The crypto arbitrage fund you started. The one that turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. His eyes widened. He looked at our parents, panic flaring. Shut up. You told Mom and Dad the investors just went away. You told them the SEC investigation was dropped because you were innocent, I continued, relentless. That is not what happened. The investors were made whole because someone bought their debt. Someone paid off the liabilities, cents on the dollar, and absorbed the loss to keep you out of federal prison. I paused, letting the weight of the memory settle on him. That was me, I whispered. I own your bad debt, Tyler. I own your failures. I kept you out of handcuffs because I thought you were family. I thought you deserved a second chance. I looked at my parents. They were frozen, their expressions a mask of horror and disbelief. But tonight I realized you did not learn a thing. You just thought you were untouchable. I picked up my phone. I am calling in the debt, Tyler. All of it. The bridge financing is gone. And the old notes are due immediately. I checked the time. You have until banking hours open tomorrow to find a solution. Good luck. Tyler stared at his phone, his face a mask of disbelief. The notifications began to flood in, like a digital avalanche. Ping. An automated email from the board. Urgent. Financing withdrawn. Ping. An alert from the bank. Warning. Debt recall initiated. Immediate payment required. Ping, ping, ping. He looked at me, eyes wide and frantic. You are bluffing. You cannot just recall debt like that. There is a grace period. There is due process. Read the fine print, Tyler, I said, my voice cutting through his panic. The debt purchase agreement had a conduct clause. It allows the holder to demand immediate repayment if the debtor engages in behavior detrimental to the lender's interests. And frankly, insulting the lender's daughter at dinner qualifies. The color drained from his face completely. He looked down at his phone again, his fingers trembling as he scrolled through the legal notices. But the gala, he stammered, his arrogance dissolving into pathetic desperation. The venue is booked. The press is coming. If this gets out, if people know I am insolvent, they will know, I said. Because without that bridge loan, you cannot make payroll next week. You cannot pay the vendors for your little party. It is over. Mom, Dad? Tyler turned to our parents, his voice rising in panic. Do something. She is destroying me. She is ruining everything. Susan and David looked at me, their expressions a mix of horror and confusion. They were still struggling to process the shift in power. Their quiet, unsuccessful daughter was suddenly the one holding all the cards. Ashley, please, my mother pleaded, her voice shaking. This is your brother. You cannot do this. Think about the family. Think about the scandal. I am thinking about the family, I said. I am thinking about the family that humiliated my daughter for sport. I am thinking about the family that values image over kindness. We did not mean it like that, my father interjected, trying to regain some authority. We were just trying to help Sophia fit in. You are being vindictive, Ashley. You are being cruel. Cruel? I laughed, a harsh sound that startled even me. Cruel is telling an 11-year-old she is not good enough because she likes to paint. Cruel is using your daughter as a piggy bank while treating her like a servant. I am not being cruel, Dad. I am being businesslike. Is that not what you always wanted? A winner in the family? I looked at Tyler, who was now slumped in his chair, head in his hands. The future CEO facade had cracked, revealing the terrified, incompetent man underneath. It was strange. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to feel a surge of victory. Instead, I just felt a profound sense of clarity. This was the delusion of power, of the empty wallet. Tyler had built his entire identity on the illusion of success, on the money I had provided. Without it, he was nothing. His confidence, his swagger, his cruelty, it was all rented. He was a hollow man in a borrowed suit, terrified that someone would see the truth, and now, everyone saw. I am leaving, I said, signaling to Sophia to stand up. Wait! Tyler scrambled to his feet, reaching out as if to grab me. Ashley, please. I will apologize. I will let Sophia come to the gala. She can sit at the head table. Just stop the recall, please. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I did not hate him. I pitied him. It is too late for the gala, Tyler, I said softly. And it is too late for apologies. You made your choice. You chose the brand. Now you have to live with the bankruptcy. I took Sophia's hand and walked out of the dining room, leaving them in the ruins of their own making. 1 year later, I stood in the center of a white-walled gallery in downtown Chicago. It was not a prestigious museum. It was not a corporate event space. It was a community art center, filled with natural light and the hum of quiet conversation. On the walls hung Sophia's paintings. There were no price tags, no branding, no logos. Just art. Sophia, now 12, stood near the entrance, talking animatedly to a group of her friends from school. She was wearing a dress covered in paint splatters, a deliberate choice this time, and she looked radiant. She was not shrinking. She was not apologizing for taking up space. She was glowing. I watched her, a glass of sparkling water in my hand, feeling a sense of peace so profound it almost hurt. The past year had been a dismantling. Tyler's company had entered receivership within a month of my withdrawal. The Scholastic Achievement Gala never happened. The lake house was sold at auction to cover a fraction of the recalled debts. My parents had moved into a modest condo, downsizing not just their square footage, but their egos. They tried to contact me, of course. Letters, emails, voicemails. Tyler sent long, rambling messages, blaming the economy, his partners, the vulture capitalists. He never once took responsibility. My parents sent guilt trip cards about tearing the family apart. I did not answer. I changed my number. I moved my office to a building with biometric security. I ghosted them, not out of malice, but out of necessity. I realized then that I had not lost a family. I had saved my daughter. I walked over to Sophia, who was showing her friends a painting of a blue heron taking flight. It represents freedom, she was explaining, her voice clear and confident. Like, when you finally let go of something heavy and just fly. I smiled. She understood more than I ever gave her credit for. Cutting ties with family is a taboo subject. We are taught that blood is a bond that cannot be broken, that loyalty is owed simply by virtue of shared DNA. But sometimes, blood is not a bond, it is a shackle. Sometimes, Loyalty is just a fancy word for submission. Walking away is not an act of war. It is an act of survival. It is the realization that you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. If you are holding on to a rope that burns you, if you are gripping a connection that bleeds you dry, let go. The fall is scary, the silence is deafening, but the peace on the other side? It is worth every penny. Sophia looked up and caught my eye. She grinned, a genuine, unburdened smile. "Thanks for coming, Mom," she said. "I would not miss it for the world," I replied. "This fits our brand perfectly." She laughed. And in that sound, I heard the future, bright, authentic, and entirely ours. If this story resonated with you, if you have ever had to be the architect of your own rescue, hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your peace is worth the price.